You got him at gunpoint. Don't move! Don't move! I'm gonna blow your brains out if you move, you.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. Our video today comes to us from Edgewater, Colorado, and a news story published a few days ago by Channel 9 News, which is an NBC affiliate in Colorado. The story relates to the conduct of Officer Paul Perez, who currently works at the Edgewater Police Department, but was formerly employed by the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. Now, viewers of my channel won't be shocked by the video necessarily because it perfectly depicts the condition of law enforcement in a state that is probably tied with Florida and Minnesota for having the worst law enforcement in the country, at least in my opinion. But it will enrage you, so be ready for that. I haven't made any substantial edits to the video, but I do encourage you to head over to the 9 News YouTube channel and thank them for doing the good journalistic work on this story. Now let's watch the video and we'll come back and talk about the law.
Police officer's body camera captured every word of his threats to shoot a man suspected of firing into cars and homes during the man's arrest last December.
Prosecutors say that body camera video gave them no choice but to offer a plea deal now in this case. 9 News Investigates reporter Kevin Vaughn was in court today for the man's sentencing.
We have a number of cases to call this afternoon.
In a fifth-floor courtroom,
We'll start with 23 CR 3232.
a 19-year-old faced the consequences of this night.
15, everybody get up here, he's running.
The night he tried to steal 2 cars.
15, I got him at gunpoint. Don't move! Don't move!
The night he fired 8 gunshots.
It's only by the grace of God that no one was killed or injured.
This video is a big part of the reason.
I'm gonna blow your brains out if you move, you. Don't move!
The reason why prosecutors okayed a plea deal.
I will shoot you, man. Don't move! I'm with you.
Any jury listening to this would be turned off.
Ed Obayashi is a national expert in police use of force.
It's a type of conduct, especially in this day and age, that the public does not want to hear or see.
And Obayashi's not alone.
Abhorrent, problematic.
That's Jefferson County District Attorney Alexis King, whose office prosecuted the case.
I've never seen a body-worn camera quite like that.
The officer in that video is Paul Perez, and 9 News Investigates found this wasn't the first time his gun and his mouth got him in trouble.
Yeah, you want to call and I'll call and you hook. Right.
In 2019, Perez was a Boulder County Sheriff's deputy aiming his gun at a man he thought was physically ill.
Open the door with your left hand.
But documents show Perez had no articulable reason to justify the use of force. Obayashi agrees.
Someone being passed out is really a welfare check, not a crime in progress.
Just arrest me.
Then there was this confrontation.
Oh my God. Brian,
Don't start reaching in your pockets. Do not start reaching in your pockets. I'll shoot you where you stand, partner.
With Perez holding his handgun in a sideways manner, gangster style.
Just unnecessary bravado.
During that Boulder investigation, Perez said it was his philosophy that to de-escalate a situation, he must escalate his use of force. A division chief fired Perez in August 2019. 5 months later, Edgewater PD hired him. Now another internal investigation, this time over his handling of 3 cases, including this one, the one we showed you at the start.
I'm gonna blow your brains out if you move, you.
Do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember your reaction?
I was horrified.
A video troubling for the language and the threats, and for the moment Perez pressed his pistol to the back of the man's head.
His decision to hold a gun to that man's head was not okay.
It's improper, it's unsafe.
Officer Perez and Edgewater Police Chief Eric Sonstegard declined our requests for on-camera interviews, but the chief defended his officer, writing that he was disciplined and that he and all officers deserve help when they experience ups and downs.
You'll be out in the community soon.
In that 5th-floor courtroom, the suspect also got another chance. 3 years in an intensive community corrections program, along with treatment, and the hope he'll be rehabilitated.
Sir, best of luck to you in the future.
The Edgewater chief issued Officer Perez a written reprimand and ordered him to undergo additional training and see the department's psychologist. He also took away Perez's status as a field training officer for a year. In the studio, I'm Kevin Vaughn, 9 News.
I guess my first thoughts are, what in the actual is this prosecutor doing? Her answer to what she sees in this video is to diminish the charges for the shooter and then express her disgust about the conduct of the officer. What? Is this real life right now? This police officer unquestionably should be charged criminally. There's nothing in this video that justifies his conduct, but it is tricky. This would be a classic situation where deadly force would be arguably justified according to the rules established in Tennessee versus Garner, because you do have a person who allegedly just shot at people and ultimately pleads guilty to it. And so it's pretty clear cut that this actually happened. But because this is a case where you could potentially have justifiable use of deadly force, that's the exact same reason why this officer should be charged criminally. Now, I understand that that might be confusing because I'm essentially saying that he might be justified in using deadly force had he used it, but also suggesting that he should be charged criminally for what he did. But stick with me for a second. According to Tennessee versus Garner, a police officer may use deadly force to prevent the escape of a fleeing suspect only if the officer has a good faith belief that the suspect poses a significant threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer or others. Well, what just happened right before this video that we saw? This 19-year-old suspect attempted to carjack 2 people and fired at least 8 shots into homes and vehicles in the process. So that means that this officer, at least at some point during this foot pursuit, would have had license to shoot and kill this kid. Now, the kid apparently threw the gun down, and that was alleged to have been captured somewhere on body cam prior to him surrendering. So there was a point at which deadly force would be no longer justified. And so by the time this officer does what he does with the gun in the back of the kid's head, the authorization to use deadly force is over with. And so that's why he's exceeded the scope of the force that he's allowed to use under the law. But try to tell me with a straight face that this officer, this particular officer, would not have shot him if he had made anything that could have been half-assedly argued as furtive movements. We just learned that Perez has a documented philosophy that he must escalate his force in order to de-escalate. We also know from his documented history that his preference is to slingshot his own escalation directly to pulling his gun, which is a threat of deadly force, in order to accomplish the de-escalation. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the use of force continuum. A typical use of force continuum allows an officer to utilize one level of force above the force demonstrated by the subject in order to gain control. What Perez does, as is documented by his own statements, is he goes to the highest level of force first. And let's be honest, he does it not because it's even arguably the safest thing to do. He does it because he gets off on being intoxicated by having power over people. Now, you may not realize it, but you already actually understand how a use of force continuum is supposed to work. If you have a standard central air setup at your home, you have a real-life use of force continuum right at your fingertips. Now, I know that might sound a little confusing, but bear with me here. See, the use of force continuum is best understood in terms of observing the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat, which is what you would have attached to your regular AC unit. A thermometer reacts. A thermostat controls. A thermometer says, holy shit, it's 98 degrees in here. A thermostat says, whoa, getting a little warm. Let's bring it down a notch. See the difference? Now, if you share your life with a woman, like I do, you might know what an overreaction to the temperature looks like. I jokingly say that because when my wife gets in our vehicle, she doesn't set the thermostat on a comfortable temperature and exercise patience while she waits for it to get more comfortable. If she's the least bit hot, she turns the AC on the coldest setting humanly possible and keeps it there until it becomes the temperature that she's comfortable with. And then she turns it to whatever the temperature is that she wants to maintain. That is the same model that Officer Perez uses to control resistance. The difference is, and it's a substantial difference, when my wife does it, all she does is the electric slide all up and down my last damn nerve and use a little additional fuel in the car or a little additional electricity in the house. When Officer Perez does it, he endangers the entire public. In short, his documented decision making indicates that he can't be trusted with a gun and a badge. So what needs to be done with Perez? Well, if the prosecutor wasn't weak, Perez would be charged criminally. But with what? My initial inclination was obviously aggravated assault. But if you read the Colorado statutes, they don't include threats in the assault code, which is really strange. At common law, assault is actually defined by the threats of physical harm, and it's battery that is the actual physical contact. So generally you have bifurcated charges of assault and battery. Some states have abandoned the bifurcation, but generally if they have an assault, it covers both the physical touching and threats. Colorado doesn't do that. The Colorado assault statutes all have a serious bodily injury component, or at least a bodily injury component. So seeing Perez exceed the scope of the force necessary to take a suspect into custody does not actually qualify as assault under Colorado law where there's no bodily injury incurred. But there is a Colorado code that specifically deals with threats, and that code is called menacing. So let's look at the code and see if it fits. Colorado Code 183206. A person commits the crime of menacing if, by any threat or physical action, he or she knowingly places or attempts to place another person in fear of imminent serious bodily injury. Menacing is a Class 1 misdemeanor, but it is a Class 5 felony if committed by the use of a firearm. So we clearly have menacing here. I mean, there is surely threat of serious bodily injury if anything goes south in this encounter when you're holding a gun to the back of somebody's head. So we do have felony menacing that could be charged, but is there anything else? Well, yes, Colorado also has a code for reckless endangerment. Let's take a look at that. Colorado Code 183208 provides that a person who recklessly engages in conduct that creates a substantial risk of serious bodily injury to another person commits reckless endangerment, which is a Class 2 misdemeanor. Now remember that recklessness is generally defined as a willful disregard of a known risk. So do we have that here? Well, I mean, I would make the argument, I think pretty effectively, that placing your firearm in direct contact with a person's head is absolutely reckless for a couple of very obvious reasons. Number one, you could slip, overreact to a movement, and kill the kid for no reason. Number two, you could be a complete chicken shit, which is clearly the case with Officer Perez here, and get your own gun taken and used against you, which would create a substantial risk of harm since the person you're taking into custody here has already demonstrated a propensity to shoot at people in public. So giving him an extra gun is not a great idea. Now there is actual precedent for charging this officer in Colorado. You guys might remember that after the Denver Nuggets won the NBA championship last summer, there was a Denver police officer who picked up and slammed a fan on the ground, causing him to lose consciousness after the fan punched someone in the street in the midst of the chaos of the championship celebration. He was charged with assault, convicted, and decertified, and can never work as an officer again. That is exactly what should happen to Perez in this situation. In closing, in my opinion, this is all on the prosecutor, and if she doesn't charge Perez, she should be voted out in the next election. This is a perfect example of how out of touch elected officials get with regular people. First and foremost, the conduct of the officer really had nothing to do with the shooting. It was after the fact. It was during the apprehension of the suspect. It's not like the evidence gathered was tainted in some way by the conduct of the police officer. The person who victimized the people prior to his capture is still responsible and should be held responsible for the shooting. Now, you know, reasonable minds can differ, and I understand that she took a lesser plea because she was afraid of jury nullification, and that's a real concern. But in my opinion, what she should have done is just taken her chances and let the jury acquit the kid if that was her concern and if that's what the public wanted to do. If she had put the kid on trial, she would have been able to get a good read on how the people of Colorado feel about police misconduct. She also wouldn't have diminished the victimization of the people who were victims of the shooter. She should have also brought charges against Perez. And then she'd be able to say that she takes both crimes seriously, that while Perez's conduct was disgusting and unacceptable, it didn't do anything to diminish the crime committed beforehand. And it gave her an opportunity to both do justice for the victims and protect the public from a dangerous police officer before someone had to die at his hands. Instead, what she's trying to do is what Earl Smuter famously told Felony Melanie that she couldn't do in the classic rom-com Sweet Home Alabama, and that is to ride two horses with one ass. She's trying to appease the police departments while at the same time acting like she's appalled by the conduct of the police officer. The problem is, it's not one of her main responsibilities to make police agencies happy. However, among her actual responsibilities are protecting the public from bad cops and protecting the public from violent offenders. Neither of those are accomplished by the actions that she chose to take. As a result, Perez is still a cop being defended by his chief, and there's nothing I see here that doesn't suggest to me that this situation is a preview to a future deadly force encounter where someone is going to die unnecessarily as a result of the fact that Paul Perez is still a police officer. The prosecutor is the person at the top, the chief law enforcement officer in that jurisdiction that could put this guy on a Brady list, could report him to post, and could charge him criminally to make sure that he is decertified and never works as a police officer again. And whatever he does moving forward is directly at her feet. That's all for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave me a comment on the video. Please watch some of the other videos on the channel and leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.